Good afternoon to you. Mark Stott of HurricaneTrack.com. This is the Hurricane Outlook and Discussion, my only video for today. Got to get on the road. Got to go to Florida. Florida very much on edge as we watch what's going to happen with eventual Hurricane Ian. Still a tropical storm today. We got a lot to cover. It is the 25th of September, Sunday the 25th. What are things going to be like over the next few days? That snapshot there, part of our thumbnail and title card. A little bit of a preview of what we might be dealing with in the days ahead. A very delicate situation coming up and a very potentially serious situation for our friends down in Florida. But first, Jamaica, possibly, little impact there. The Caymans, possibly, and certainly western Cuba. So let's take a look at what is happening here from the National Hurricane Center homepage real quick. There's Ian. No worries with this at all. And there's what's left of Gaston spinning out there west of the Azores. All right, so let's take a look at the satellite animation of Ian this afternoon. Not a lot of deep thunderstorm activity around the center, which is right there. Clearly you can see that. But it is well structured. The framework is there. If it can build deep thunderstorms, or what we call convection, then it will be off to the races over the very warm waters of the Caribbean. This whole area all through here is primed for rapid intensification, generally speaking, especially from the ocean temperature point of view. As far as impacts, yes, there are some bands loosely related to the overall circulation pattern of Ian. By the way, just look at the size of this overall envelope of energy. A very large system, so once it gets going, its footprint of impact is going to be quite large. So even though the center is way down here, you are getting some rain squalls, heavy rains from time to time there in Jamaica. That's also starting to spread up into the Cayman Islands. And then all of this will eventually make its way towards western Cuba. And then, of course, somewhere along the Florida coastline midweek or so next week. Just a little bit closer view. It's funny, it's not even that much of a zoomed-in view, but you can just get a little bit of a better idea of the structure. A well-defined system at the surface. Excellent banding. Like I said, the framework is there. It's just a matter of once the dry air and these other impediments that are still holding it down, once those relent, it'll be off to the races with this, and we could see a period of rapid strengthening as it makes its way up in the vicinity of the Cayman Islands and eventually the Isle of Youth right there, and somewhere along the western part of Cuba. Looking at the track map from our HurricaneTrack Insider site, the interactive map, I want to zoom in here. This is really important. It's pretty important. This is where the 11 a.m. advisory began. So if this was 11 o'clock in the morning or so, just a little while ago, several hours ago, that little symbol right there would be right there. However, that is not the case. It is 2:48 in the afternoon, and we have gotten an intermediate advisory for Tropical Storm Ian. And if we click on it, it tells us that 2 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, 50-mile-per-hour wind, the pressure slowly going down, so forth and so on. What's this big deal about this? Why is this important? Is our map broken? Is something not aligning? No, that's not it. This is the cone track uncertainty area, whatever you want to call it. That's the track from 11 a.m. this morning. This is where it is from 2 p.m. today. I think we can all see it is off track by a certain angle there. I'm just trying to draw it. It's hard to do. But you get the idea. Actually, I know what I can do. I'll use our little distance thing here. We'll start here and end right there. Oh, that's beautiful. It's 34 miles away. Distance-wise, I can't calculate angles. That'd be pretty cool. But you see it's off track just a little bit there. And so it's more north and east. That's the bottom line. And that's important because it is tracking to the right of the forecast. All right? So does that matter? Yes, it does, because later down the road, it's all about geometry when it comes to Florida. Remember your angles? I do a little bit. And so it is about the approach to the coast and where that is. A little bit of a difference now can make a big difference later in who gets what impacts. And we'll revisit that in just a few minutes here as I progress through the update. So it comes along, passing hopefully to the west, the worst of the conditions to the west of the Cayman Islands. And then it could pass right over the western tip of Cuba. And again, that's the center of circulation. The eye, if it would happen to have one, something like that. And then the effects would be out to the east of that, where they would be the worst. So any deviation back to the east, then you start to compound those effects, especially where the water gets funneled in those different concave areas of western Cuba. From there into the southeast Gulf of Mexico, where it could very easily become a Category 4, as indicated right here. And it is not out of the realm of possibility that it could be stronger, maybe even a 5, or it could keep sputtering. I want to remind you that intensity forecasting is where the least amount of skill is with us mere humans trying to figure all these things out. The track forecasts are hard enough, but the intensity forecasting, we sometimes get major surprises. And all we got to do is look back at Michael in 2018 as a great example. The typhoon that is currently affecting the Philippines, another prime example. It intensified 85 knots within a 24-hour period. That's 100 miles per hour. It was not forecast. It was unexpected, and these things do happen. But they can also be forecast to be very strong and not live up to those expectations. So we try to also want to pull away from, well, what category is it going to be? What's the wind going to be? And let's think about what the impacts are and where people live. And we will address that more in the coming days. I just want to kind of set things up for what's happening right now. So that's the track. We know that generally by now. You've seen this. But it's into the area of Florida. I want to make it very clear, if this came to fruition exactly as forecast, if this was perfect, you would have a significant storm surge all along this area. How high would it be? I don't know yet. That comes from the National Hurricane Center, and those particular products will be coming in the next few days. All right? So that's the look at the track map. This is also, we talked about this before, a great tool, this dashboard here from Tropical Tidbits. And the main thing I want to show you is the consensus over here. This is the 12Z, so it hasn't updated just yet. We'll get the 18Z guidance. And it's that little area right there, the consensus, TVCN, TVCA. Generally speaking, that's what the official forecast track will look like overall. And then you've got your different models that make up the overall guidance envelope. And you can see it gets pretty wide after day 3. But the consensus there from 12Z was up into the Big Bend of Florida, and the official forecast happens to be right there. I fully expect, based on everything that has happened from the 12Z guidance, because a lot of this is interpolated, by the way, from earlier. It gets brought forward into time to create the 12Z consensus. So the 12Z data will generate the 18Z consensus, if that makes sense. Sure, it does. So there's a lag there, all right, because the models have to render, they come out at different times, and so forth and so on. So the 18Z consensus, the TVCN, the TVCA, and there's others, HCCA and whatever, but we primarily focus on TVCN and the TVCA. They mention that a lot in the discussions, all right? I ran over that last night in the evening update. But those are going to be based on 6 hours earlier of data, if I understand it correctly. So when the 18Z version of this map comes out, it'll be based on 12Z data, 12 Zulu time, 12 UTC. That's 8 a.m. Eastern time when those models were initialized. That's what that means, by the way. All right, let's get on with it. So that's the idea. The 12Z, based on earlier runs, was into the Big Bend. I fully expect that this will shift some, maybe towards Cedar Key more, maybe more than that. You don't usually get massive shifts unless there are massive shifts in the guidance, and we really haven't seen anything like that significantly, but it's about that angle. Remember, just a slight change in angle means either Tampa gets a direct hit perhaps, or if it's just a little bit off to the right of that, it could be Fort Myers. We remember this from Charlie. Charlie was forecast to come into Tampa. It changed its course, its heading there, by just a few degrees. You know, going due north versus just a little bit this way, a few degrees off of that, whatever that angle is. I don't have the brain power to calculate it right now, but that's a big difference in who gets hit later. And that's what happened with Charlie. It was forecast to come up here. It changed its angle at those last few hours and came into Port Charlotte. It makes a big difference. Even though it wasn't a drastic change, it made a drastic change in who got impacted the most. All right, this is also got to be factored in. The water temperatures basically from just south of Tampa Bay through the areas just north of the Florida Straits and into the Straits, very, very warm, 30 degrees Celsius or higher. But make no mistake, the water temperature, these blues, don't let that throw you off. That's still 82.5 degrees, if not warmer, Fahrenheit. Very warm water to work with, no question about it. Also, very warm water to work with in the vicinity of Cuba. And then if it tracks, like the forecasts are generally showing, up into this area, generally speaking, plenty of warm water to work with. The blue, not cold water. Look at the legend. The legend says 28.5 or warmer. It gets warmer to the right, and that is all very warm water, untouched, unupwelled from something else. Nothing has happened in the Gulf this year, so there will be plenty of energy to work with. And to that end, there's also, that water is warmer than the long-term average as well. In some cases, it looks like about 1 degree Celsius warmer, and that matters. That's more energy that is available for this to tap into. So before I show you this, and I'm sure you've already seen it, but I want to try to explain it a little bit. The guidance from the GFS and some of the other models, we've had this sort of battle, which seems to always happen, between the European, the ECMWF, and the GFS. It's almost like rivalry teams, different people pulling for which one. But in the end, it doesn't matter. There's no winner, so to speak. It's all about the impacts. But since we know human nature, we want to look, we want to see what are the models showing. Us seeing the models doesn't change the outcome. That's what's so weird about it. It'd be interesting one day to do a podcast series about the psychology of weather. Any sponsors want to do that? I'll be glad to host that. But it's true. We have this fascination because it's there. We probably shouldn't be looking at it, but we do. Because a lot of people don't understand what they're looking at. I don't understand all of it. But that being the case, what do we got? What's the bottom line? Well, the GFS, which has been pretty far west of the euro over the last few days, is starting to align better with, I don't like saying caving or giving up or whatever, because it's not a person, it's not a living thing, but it is aligning better. There's more consensus now, more agreement. That's the better scientific way to put it, with the other guidance, okay? So there's not a winner or a loser. It's complicated. It really is. And that is not a term to suggest that we don't understand it or that it is above your pay grade to understand it. It really is complicated by default. Trying to figure out the atmosphere 2 days in advance, much less 5. Are you kidding me? It's a wonder that it even works at all. So the GFS has come to the east a little bit more, and the euro has pretty much held this for the last couple of days pretty strong. Western tip of Cuba, and then a turn toward the northeast, slowing down. And on this run from today, the 12Z run, right into Tampa. Not good. And it's very important to point out, after it leaves Cuba, it's at about 984. It drops 14 millibars and then comes into Tampa. That's after landfall. So there's land interaction. It goes back up to 980. So between these frames here on the higher resolution version that I don't have time to wait for, we got to go, it's rapidly intensifying, at least inherently, not necessarily meeting National Hurricane Center criteria, but it's definitely quickly strengthening from Cuba to the coast, and that could be a big problem. We're running out of time. This is 4 days from now. 4 days. And, the GFS, I'm just going to show you real quick, is just a little bit more to the north and east from there. You see it comes in very strong, and then it starts to weaken because it's feeling sheer and dry air, and it makes landfall up in the Big Bend area. That is a pretty big difference. The euro is down here in the Tampa Bay area. The GFS is going to be right up here near St. Mark's. It's not a drastic distance, but it's that angle. Math is so important here, geometry, I'm telling you. If we had time to really go in and break it down and draw in all those angles, I bet Tomer Berg, one of those talented young people out there that are just killing it on the coding side, they could probably do that. What is the divergence there? What is that angle? So it makes a huge difference in who gets what impacts, especially with the storm surge. I beg of you, from right here, bottom of my heart's right there, right? To forget the wind for this one. Don't worry about the wind. You can survive the wind if you use common sense. You hunker down, you hide, you get away from something that could crush you, or houses that aren't safe in the wind. But you can't deal with 10, 15, 20 feet of water that's moving, that's being driven in, that's got all kinds of junk and snakes and alligators and fire ants and possums and raccoons, squirrels, whatever. I'm serious. I've seen it. It's not like the movie The Titanic where the water comes in. As good as that movie was, it would have had a lot more crap in it. Seriously. And now with CG they could probably do that. in reality, and I know Titanic wasn't sunk from a storm surge, but that's what I'm saying. It's not clean. It's not like The Perfect Storm or any of these other movies you've seen. That water is nasty. It's got stuff in it that'll cut you and slam you up against stuff, and you cannot deal with 15 or 20 feet of water. And the surge from a possible Cat 4 will deliver a 20-foot plus surge if it's that strong. And this could be a large hurricane, not a little small one like Charlie. Charlie was smallish in its aerial coverage. So let's just toss the category. All of you that are following me, toss the category out. Do it right now. Get it out of here. No categories. We're not going to worry about that. We're going to worry about the impacts. And surge is my number one fear for you folks down in Florida. I know a lot of you personally, and you're right along the coast. And this is a big problem. All right? So the Euro has been pretty steadfast with its insistence, if you will, that it's near Tampa Bay or vicinity. That hasn't wavered much these last couple of days. You see it goes up there. And by the way, what are those colors? That's your 10-meter wind. 10 meters up. That's not that high. No, I'm sorry. That's 5,000-foot wind. My fault. Let me back up there. 850 millibars. The 10-meter wind comes in on the higher resolution, which I don't think those have rendered out yet. Let me just check real quick. We have it out to 51 hours, and you do get, I think if you look down here at the lower dynamics, yeah, it will give you 10-meter wind there. Not helpful because we can't wait for it to render out all the way. But hurricane conditions certainly possible inland over northern Florida from where this would potentially make landfall. So it's going to be a large wind field. That is the bottom line here. Please keep that in mind. Here's a good animation from the weather.us model site of the there's more frames here. And you can see this thing comes in. Look, Tampa Bay is right there. Right there. That's Tampa Bay. This makes landfall right over the peninsula here, St. Petersburg area. So surge could potentially be a massive problem all through this area if this comes to fruition. And then you're going to get hurricane conditions up here. You folks in the villages, you folks in Ocala, that right front quadrant that comes in here, you could have tornadoes. This could potentially be a devastating event for Florida if it comes in something like this. It really could. And people don't have that much time. It's not been locked in for days. They're going to have to start making decisions tonight and tomorrow. And believe me, they're working on it. I know some of these emergency managers personally, and they're working on it. But this is it. We're coming down to about 4 days. That's 96 hours or so, maybe less if it's even more of an angle, a sharper angle towards maybe Cape Coral or something like that. Then we have even less time. So let me get this wrapped up and get on the road, all right? Because we don't have that much time either. What are we going to do? Let me go back to the track map real quick. I'm going to turn off the tracking stuff and just kind of show you what we're thinking. I'm going to head down from Wilmington. We have all kinds of assets, lots and lots of these remote camera systems, our mobile weather stations that we can attach to bridges and overpasses right on the Jersey walls. So anywhere from Appalachia Bay down to Naples is our target area. We realize that's a huge area, and we have the manpower to cover it. And then inland as well. We're going to put some equipment inland. We want to make sure we don't leave that out. We have pressure sensors, we have wind gauges, and we have our live cams. And we also have our GoPro units, just like that guy right there, back on my backdrop. We put our GoPro cams out. Those record in high definition. And we got plenty. We are the most loaded for bear that we have ever been. And our plan will be to set all of this up and broadcast live as long as we can. Multiple cameras, a good team in place. How do we do it? It's through this. I'm telling you, this is why I pitch this. Patreon is not only how we fund it, but it is also how we develop that word right there, our community. We do this for you. It's my job, and I certainly should be able to earn a living, and this is how I do it. And we fund it all through Patreon, so we're not attached to any type of corporate sponsorship. I don't have to mention things. I don't have to get likes and views for people to think that we're worthy. We just go do our work, and we put it in the hands of the people. Now, this season, I will be working with Fox Weather. They are a relatively new entity that has come on the scene. Brian Norcross is their hurricane expert, so I encourage you to download the Fox Weather app, and they will be covering it. They have a great team. My good friend Jeff Flock, who works with Fox Business, hopefully he'll be out there. I worked with him in the early days of my career. And that'll be our national media partner. They are for this year, for this hurricane season. And then, beyond that, it's crowdfunded. It is. It's up to you folks. But in return, you have access to all this different stuff that I was showing you here. This interactive track map that has all of these features. The cams pop up on there. Our different track map stuff. And then there's just a whole host of other things. Just to go back to this real quick. Our Discord community. That is fantastic. I just, wow. It's amazing. So once you join up, you get to attach your account directly to Discord, and we can post stuff exclusively. We can share stuff back and forth. Oh my goodness, it is just amazing. It really is. And at the end of the day, it funds what we do, because this costs a lot of money. Believe me. And like I said, it's what I do for a living. This is my job. So I appreciate you helping to support myself and my family and allowing me to do this so that I can focus and do this to the best of our ability. All right? So head over to patreon.com or get the Patreon app and just search for Hurricane Track. And don't forget, on YouTube, please like, share, subscribe, all that stuff that YouTubers say. It really does make a difference. Those likes really add up. It makes the algorithm work. Hey, look, we live in a world that's driven by algorithms, for better or for worse, but we grow because you help to spread the word, and it makes what we do easier and better. All right? Let me finish this, get it online for you. As always, thanks for tuning in. We will be live tomorrow, Monday, on YouTube, our public-facing YouTube feed, out and about, scouting, whatever we need to do, probably tomorrow afternoon, and then from there on in, 24/7 coverage, as we call it. All right? All right, that's it from me. I am Mark Sudduth for Hurricane Track. My entire team and I, we all appreciate your support, and we'll see you again next from Florida.